This video covers the setup and operation of Oregon grinder models 88018, 88021, and 88023. The minor differences will be pointed out as you proceed. The 88018 is shown here. The first step is to unpack the grinder and all its components. This includes the operator's manual, the safety guards, the table plate adapter, and the attaching hardware. The 88018 and 88021 will include a wrench. This is not required on the 88023, which will be discussed later. Be sure the power cord is not plugged in. After all components are laid out, you will begin by attaching the 4 guards. First, you will attach the 2 large T-guards to the threaded studs on the base of the grinder using a nut and washer. One mounts on the right and one on the left side of the grinder. Final adjustment of these will be covered later. Next, you will attach the 2 small guards to the upper wheel cover, again using a nut and washer to mount them to the threaded stud. These upper 2 guards should be adjusted so they are approximately 1/8 inch from the stone face on each side. These will only need readjusted as the stone diameter decreases. Next, you will attach the table plate using 3 plastic thumb nuts and washers. The 88023 uses only 2 nuts and 2 washers for this. With all 4 guards and table plate attached, you will now adjust the grind angle by raising or lowering the motor and stone. For the 88018 and 88021, you will use the supplied wrench and loosen both nuts securing the motor to the tower. The procedure for the 88023 will be discussed later. Using the wrench, you will turn the top adjusting screw left or right to raise or lower the stone and motor. Once the motor and stone are at the correct height, it is important that the lower T-guards are adjusted to within approximately 1/8 inch of the stone face. The upper guard should already be correctly adjusted during the earlier steps. As covered earlier, they only need readjustment as the stone diameter decreases with wear. The table plate now needs to be adjusted so it is also approximately 1/8 inch from the stone face. Be sure all attaching hardware is tight. Now, retighten both nuts holding the motor to the tower. Make a final check that all adjustments are still correct. This ensures that the machine is set to give the operator the most protection if a stone failure should occur. The majority of the debris would be contained in the upper guard and directed out the side of the machine away from the operator. Always ensure that bystanders are at a safe distance. You will now cover the procedure to adjust the grinding angle for the blade. The grinder has a safety interlock on-off switch. With the lock pin removed, the grinder cannot be accidentally turned on. It also is recommended to unplug the grinder during adjustments. The blade to be sharpened will determine the angle the machine is set at. All Oregon blades are ground at 30 degrees. Set the blade on the table and match its angle to the stone face. If the angle of the blade and the stone do not match, you will need to adjust the stone and motor up or down to achieve the correct grind angle. As covered earlier, this is achieved by loosening the 2 tower nuts and turning the top adjusting screw to raise or lower the stone and motor. Once the correct angle is achieved, recheck the adjustment of the guards and plates and retighten the tower nuts. You are now ready to sharpen the blade. You can now plug the power cord into an approved outlet and insert the switch safety pin. You now need to set the motor switch to forward or reverse. For normal right-hand cut blades where the cutting edge is on the right side as shown, the motor switch should be set to the forward position. This rotates the stone counterclockwise, which draws the blade towards the stone and throws the sparks to the side of the grinder opposite the blade. Before you begin grinding, you should be sure you have the correct safety gear: gloves, hearing protectors, and of course safety glasses or face shield for eye protection. Next, adjust the light to the correct position. Be sure to always stand facing the grinder, never on the sides. Be sure all bystanders are a safe distance away. Turn the switch to the on position and let the motor and stone come to full speed. With the motor and stone at full speed, lay the blade flat on the table at 90 degrees to the 1-inch stone face and pass the blade edge back and forth, removing material with each pass. Notice that the sparks are being thrown out on the work table to the right. If you have purchased the optional grit collector, it can be attached to that side of the grinder. This will keep the work area much cleaner. Continue to pass the blade across the stone until the edge has all the nicks and dull spots removed. The blade edge should not be razor sharp. A 0.030 inch to 0.060 inch edge is recommended. The blade would now be turned and the process repeated on the opposite end. Try to make about the same number of passes as on the first end. Switch the grinder off and now use a balancer, such as the Oregon 42047 magnetic balancer, to check the blade for correct balance. Push the magnetic unit back and then center the blade on the cone. Pull the magnetic hold unit into position and then holding the blade horizontal, release it. If one end drops down, that end will need more material removed from it. Remove the blade from the balancer, making note of the heavy end. Go back to the grinder and slowly remove material from the heavy end. Remove the material from the sharpened edge only. Never grind material from the ends or back of the blade. Check frequently until you achieve a balanced blade. At this point, be sure the grinder switch is off and you remove the switch safety pin to prevent accidental starting or unauthorized use of the grinder. Turn off the light and clean the work area of grit and dust. The unit requires no service beyond this, with the exception of dressing the stone when needed and occasionally checking for loose nuts and bolts. Shown here is the on-off switch used on the 88023. Notice it is positioned higher and on the left side of the grinder. It also has a larger yellow safety pin, but functions the same as the one shown on the other grinders. The other difference in the 88023 is that it does not require tools to adjust the motor and stone. It instead has two plastic thumb nuts to hold the motor tower and an aluminum wheel to adjust the motor and stone up and down. Please review the general grinder operation before using sharpening blades. Sharpening the cutting edge on the wavy mulching blade has always been difficult with standard grinders. It is hard to correctly sharpen the different cutting planes. To make this an easy task, Oregon has developed a mulching blade adapter for each of our models of grinders. For this video, we are using model 88021. To mount the mulching adapter, simply remove the table plate adapter and use the same thumb screws to mount the mulching blade adapter. The guide pin on the mulching blade adapter is set at the correct grinding angle of 30 degrees, so you simply adjust the motor and stone down to 1/8 inch from the pin. With the adapter in place and the stone adjusted, this allows the contour of the blade to gently glide over the pin, keeping the cutting edge of the blade in correct contact with the stone face. Be sure all guards and safety equipment are in place and set the forward reverse switch to reverse. Be sure to follow all general setup and safety instructions provided with the grinder. Turn the grinder on and allow the stone to come to full speed. Now, guide the blade over the pin, letting it follow the cutting edge contour. Keep the back side of the cutting edge flat and in contact with the pin. Please note that because of running in the reverse direction, the sparks will be emitted on the left side of the machine. After both sides of the blade have been sharpened, switch the grinder off and check the blade for balance. As mentioned earlier, the motor switch should be in the reverse direction to prevent the blade from pinching between the stone face and pin. The optional grit collector can be mounted to the left side of the grinder during this operation, but was not used to allow better visibility during this video. A final reminder, the forward reverse switch should be set to reverse before switching the grinder on.